Hello, and welcome to this episode of Life from the Inside Out with Kris. If you're loving this metaphysical content, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and press the bell so you get notifications when Kris releases cool new metaphysical content. And also, feel free, put comments down below. This will help perhaps drive the discussion, and we look forward to hearing from you. Let's go ahead and begin. And welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Life from the Inside Out with Kris. And last time we talked a lot about becoming grounded and some of the techniques, including forest bathing and some of the methods of that to get yourself moored and be grounded in some of the challenges that many people might be facing. And I think Kris is going to build on that. So welcome back, Kris.
Indeed. Now for the next little part. A little bit of magic, really, but it is something to be considered carefully. This again is an art practiced in many Asian countries, even in some European countries. And it is the art of doing nothing, which is not so easily accomplished. Because in your Western society, and perhaps the world over, you are encouraged to always do something, to always produce. Produce, produce, produce. Work, work, work. Very often to your detriment. So that you are always on edge. And even many people who practice various forms of meditation are entertaining the thought that meditation should produce an effect. It should produce it now. It should be done very quickly. So this is simply the art of doing nothing. Not so easily accomplished or embraced initially, because the mind races in all directions. Even people who practice mindfulness and awareness would want to engage those practices in such a situation. But this goes a little step beyond. It does not even concern itself with mindfulness or awareness of any sort. It is just to do nothing. And what happens when you do nothing? You are. It is literally the art of being. No concerns about yesterday, no concerns about tomorrow, no concerns what you are going to do later on in the day, no concerns about what you did earlier on in the day, no concerns about anything. Just literally bathe in being. Bathe yourself in the art of being. The benefits themselves can be tremendous. It can alleviate a large amount of stress. It can help lower blood pressure. So many other situations. It helps to center the mind. And as we suggested, initially, it might be a little difficult since you are so accustomed to always do something. And here you are asked to do nothing. But the benefits can become very apparent to you rather quickly. It is an extremely potent means of centering oneself. It does not involve any kind of meditation, any kind of chakra balancing. It is just the art of being. Not so easily approached. But once you do that, then the results are quite fascinating. Because first and foremost, you learn something entirely new about yourself. That you are just as valuable, as valid, and as validated in doing nothing as you are when you are doing a million things. The idea that you can be simply you can seem quite revolutionary. You somehow or other, you're pushing the envelope, you're pushing the boundaries because you have been basically trapped in a paper bag of expectations from all around you, from family, from friends, from work, from this, from that, and so many other things, tugging and pulling at you in every direction. And now we are suggesting you can be just as valid, just as cherished, and just as loved and lovable simply by doing none of that, by doing nothing, just being. Wherever it is you do that. It could be by the lakeside, it could be in the forest, it could be in the hills, it could be at home, it could be in the car. Wherever you decide to do it, just be. Not yourself as defined by so many other people or by society, by your culture, by family and friends. Just be. Imagine the weight that is going to be shed from your shoulders, from your mind. So the two, forest bathing and the art of being and doing nothing, are closely related. In fact, you could even very nicely, seamlessly blend them for maximizing the benefits. Quite nicely, might we add.
Yeah, Chris.
How does that sound to you?
Yeah, it sounds good. I've actually already experimented with that with the combination. I think one of the words too is sauntering, um, which I described as I'd go into the forest or the nature and not have a particular goal or not a particular time I'd be done, didn't know where I was going to go and just arrive and just sort of walk and move with and just be and combine those two. It was so peaceful. Yeah.
Indeed. In fact, the combination of forest bathing, meandering, sauntering, dilly-dallying, and so many others, going somewhere without any particular intent except to be. Even just walking with your body, observing from the inside, observing how your body functions, knowing that you are not your body, knowing that you are not even you, you are something else, can come into mind and increase that beautiful sense of enchantment. Because everyone deserves the opportunity to be enchanted by the world of their creations. Because you are creative beings. It is innate to everyone's nature. Even people who think they are not creative are very creative by creating their particular lives and taking stock of that and then putting everything on hold just to be, just to practice this art of being is well worth the few minutes of time. It can give you a completely different sense of being within the vast complexes of space and time and on your planet and connecting with that world. So these are two simple, practical methods to enrich your existence. And applying either or both, as we suggested moments ago, that it can be so nicely blended, can have a very empowering effect. Just observe your particular feelings and emotions in such situations and just be yourself. And that can deepen your sense of connection to the world, because that is what you need when that sense of connection seems ethereal, elusive. You cannot quite grab onto it. You may feel a certain sense of loss, even if you do not understand what that is. It induces a particular kind of feeling of being lost somewhere. And you need to find. It is not about finding yourself. It's about just finding that connection. And these two little practices can go a long way to helping you get there. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, and there's a couple interesting connections for me between what you said and some of the things we went over in the last episode. Meaning, the words you used were to discover yourself, and I'm thinking of, as either as spirit, soul, or awareness, and so those two activities. You've used the word koshas or layers before. It seems like that would be stripping away these layers and getting deeper down into who and what we actually are, and then feeling that and discovering that is going to restore that sense of safety and that sense of groundedness. Is that true?
Indeed. Indeed. You can use the idea of a beautifully crafted piece of antique furniture that has been covered over throughout the years with layers of paint and varnish. So you would want to restore it to its original luster. So you would take it to an individual who is practiced in the art of restoring furniture, and said individual would strip away all the different layers of paints and varnish that have been added to over the years on this piece of furniture and bring it down to the original texture. And in many respects, this is akin to what we are saying, to reconnect with that original you, or at least the you think you are. And in this way, recognize that the world is literally very different from that point on, from the inside out. The world is not a strange and scary place. Rather, it is an extension of how you feel, of what you believe. So by literally restoring your inner being, stripping away all of the added layers of everything that you go through life, sometimes for decades, brings you back to the original. And that indeed is a sense of accomplishment that is truly deep and perhaps even a little mind-boggling as well. to rediscover the joy of yourself as you are, not filled with the layers of expectations from everyone you've ever met and all of the family and friends and societies and all the things they expect out of you. But what do you expect out of yourself? That is a very, very different inquiry. What do you believe about yourself? What do you expect about yourself? And if you find that some of the answers are perhaps unsavory, then you can start asking questions and perhaps use some of these methods to make that connection with the original you in there, in that body. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, and a follow-up question is, if you begin practice somebody begins practicing some of these things, might they find themselves more receptive to those answers when they're in that state?
Indeed. If you quiet your mind, then you are no longer playing the recordings of everyone you've ever met and all the things that may or may not have gone wrong in your day, in your week, in your month, in your years and decades. But instead, that delightful voice that says, you are a valued and cherished individual. You are in charge of your life. So get charging. When your phone's battery is low, what do? Do you toss it or put it on your charger?
I'm fond of charging it, yes.
Indeed, especially at their cost now. So these little methods will recharge your battery. And thus charged, then you are ready to go and literally take the day. Not let it take you, but you take the day. Please feel free to continue.
Well, I was going to say there was something there that made sense as you moved into, okay, you recharge and you get going. I've also noticed that a lot of those feeling states and even that receptive mode that we just talked about filters through to when we would then perhaps in the example of forest bathing then leave the forest or perhaps go to work or be at home with family or something, that those things carry over as well.
Indeed, returning to work or family environment or literally your normal existence, with your batteries being recharged, with you being grounded, you are far more likely to stay grounded or at least be able to return to your grounded state much more quickly. So you won't feel unmoored at the slightest provocation. And that is worth its weight in gold, as they say.
And Kris, are some of the things that are happening globally and and I might even use the word like some crises, are those calls to kind of, I could use a like the word a wake up call to drive us to look at these things and look at what we're doing and perhaps move us in this direction of engaging in the things you're talking about?
To many degrees, yes. The subject matter is quite extensive, but let us simply say, for now, on that issue, that there is a shift occurring. It almost cannot be denied now. You have climate change, you have political changes. So many different situations are changing right before your eyes, and sometimes day by day. Everything is changing. But one thing is very certain. One of those things that are changing is that your species no longer desires to be told how they should feel by dictators of any kind. And we want to be very, very careful. We are talking about authoritarians who will send you and your sons and daughters to wholesale slaughter simply because they may feel that another country has somehow or other offended them, even if it's in the most delusional ways. So people have had this kind of experience for millennia. War is no longer desired, but you're caught in a dilemma because you also believe that war can bring peace. So as long as you are caught in that cycle, this is what you will experience. It is not war that can bring peace. It is peace that can bring war to an end.
Mm.
That is what is most important. When your species is done with that particular issue, then you will be able to change the course of events. You can change them now, but you need more. You need larger numbers who can align behind the idea, the notion, the belief that only peace can bring peace. The ones that want peace are not necessarily as organized as the ones who still want war. So the scales are not even. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what might large groups of people wanting peace, like what are some of the things they might do as like an organization or a group, as these individuals come together and do become organized?
We literally refuse to participate in those kinds of activities. Literally turn guns into spades, into shovels, and create more life. For now, that should be sufficient. Now, do you have any last observation?
Well, the one thing that was coming to mind was taking something that might be viewed as destructive into something. I like the we use it with the spades of moving into the um, realm of nourishment, or using our energies creatively. Not that the other thing isn't creative, but um, I think we've used the words lately, collaboration and cooperation. So it's moving from conflict to collaboration.
Indeed. When the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it caused an unprecedented level event. Two of them. So your species became both awed and fearful of those weapons of unimaginable mass destruction. But the potential for those kinds of systems is also known. So now there are different ways to try and harness nuclear energy in as best a way as possible that can provide energy for entire cities or even countries. There are ways to harness that energy so that you can create massive greenhouses. There are ways to harness that energy also to flight, to create flight engines, this will be tweaked and it will take some time. But you will have miniature versions of reactors that can power homes, neighborhoods, cities, and so many, many other things. But it takes time. And your cultures and your civilization can indeed turn the tide. First of all, again, by refusing to participate in wars and warmongering, and then utilizing the kinds of energy processes that you have. Natural solar energies, wind energy, nuclear energy, in a completely different way that can induce a sense of accomplishment like you have never had. Literally, the next great step in your civilization's advancements. So this represents opportunities that are right now difficult to completely imagine, but you are getting little glimmers of it, little hints. So by all means, we encourage you all to be very creative in those particular areas. And the more you stay away or move away from the need for war and you move towards the need for peace, the more your creativity and ideas to enhance your societies and your lives will spring from deeper within you onto the surface of your conscious mind. But it needs to start somewhere. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. And what's kind of gnawing at me is that it starts one with individuals and then it starts on the inside of developing that sense of peace. And then eventually that's reflected in things like the technologies, more collaborative solars and winds and nuclears and, yeah.
Indeed, it does. And all it takes is for someone to have one idea that is shared and other people become excited about it and see the potential. And then 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, 100,000 people, 1,000,000 people, hundreds of millions of people. When it reaches a certain level or point, the ideas become manifest. Look at your industrial revolution. Something shifted radically, rather rapidly as well. And then all of a sudden, your world was revolutionized. Engines, technology, engineering literally transformed your planet. So it can happen rather quickly. And these ideas may have been seeded thousands of years before. The very idea of flight in the old Greek myth of Icarus flying towards the sun on his wings. So the idea of flight has been with your species, not just because you saw birds fly, but because you had the desire to reach new heights. So you did in planes. And your species is extremely creative, extremely adventurous. You will succeed. Whether you believe it yourself or not, you will.
Well, that's good news.
Indeed, it is. Now, with that, we return Joseph to you, and we thank you for your consideration.
Oh, thanks so much, Chris. Until next time.